I just wanted to ask, how did yoga become so important in your life?
Boy, you know, knowledge is power. And once you have learned something, it's difficult to not put it into practice. And yoga was a natural thing for me based on how I had been practicing my spirituality. And even learning about ancient Africa and Kemet and how they practice spirituality as a lifestyle, not as something you do once a week, you know. And so I was always interested in how it is you employ, you know, the physical, the breath and the spirit, and use all of that to take you to where you need to go, you know. And when I started practicing yoga, it really unlocked a part of me that I wasn't really tapped into before. And my first major experience with it was when I trained to be a yoga teacher. And in seeing how it benefited me, I understood how it could benefit even the other young women in my country. Inner city women who were stressed out. And I had women in my mind in particular. But as I started to teach, I realized how even young men benefited so much from it, just the centering and, you know, channeling even that feminine part of themselves to be still, that nurturing, calm part. So I saw the medicinal and the spiritual benefit of it as a physical practice. And then because I was training, I learned about all the other aspects of yoga apart from just asana and stretching, you know, and that the real root of it is to connect you with your concentration, your power to concentrate, using that to meditate, and through meditation, you know, finding that God that they tell you about in religion. So it's not a man in the sky, it's a part of yourself that you can tap into. And so I was very excited by that. And, you know, later on, you know, the law of attraction, I started to learn about how His Imperial Majesty had a yoga practice as well, his own personal practice with breath and movement, and, you know, as well as how in ancient Kemet, those images that you see on the wall, you know, it's not just hieroglyphics, it's actual, you know, it's actually how the ancient Egyptians or the ancient Kemetic people used the breath, shu as they would call it, to tap into life force energy and to, you know, achieve immortality and to find God and to become pharaohs and to tap into the electromagnetics of the planet and create these amazing things that even now are still evidenced, you know. So yeah, yoga was a natural thing that, you know, just unfolded as my journey unfolded.
Because you mix also, as I read, you mix Kemet, is it the right?
Kemetic yoga.
Kemetic yoga.
Right,
yeah.
so Kemetic yoga, that's what I'm talking about,
yeah.
like the unfolding of the Egyptian spirituality. And, you know, man now in this time understanding that the roots of yoga are way beyond India. Just like original man came from Kush and trod through earth and passed knowledge through India, through China, through the Americas, all through the earth and civilized the planet, you know. These two, we see the images in stone, we see the images on the wall. We know that black people have, you know, passed spirit through earth. And finding Kemetic yoga in this time was really, really important for me because I had always been reading about it, but the yoga, the practice of yoga as an African thing, using terms that were not, you know, because I could never connect with the Indian language, and that it's just not my culture. And I would have to now go and relearn a whole different spiritual system. I wasn't looking for religion, you know. I just wanted to unlock it in my own context. And I think Kemetic yoga clearly resonates with me as an African who, you know, has long connected with her history. So it was the natural thing. And it made it easier for me to relate to even the culture of my people, to Rastafari, to show them that this is not something that is separate from you. This is your culture too, you know. And it made it easier to bypass some of the stigma and the taboo of it when you can say, yeah, man, it's an African thing.
Now you kind of anticipated my next question, because like 2 days ago we spoke with Kabaka Pyramid, and he also was speaking a lot about yoga and but also Tai Chi and this Asian heritage of those systems, and you connected more with Africa.
And all of these systems, because even if you reason with him some more, you will see that all of these systems we identify this one as Asian and this one as Indian and this one as African, but it is the same original source information, you know? It is our original way. Remember, we are not using most of our brain capacity because we are not tapped into these systems of breathing and concentration. And so we've lost a lot of our capacity to understand life and vibration. Right? And so now we see things in a very compartmentalized way, like this is from here and that is from here, rather than realizing everything is from here, everything is in here. And so that is why when you teach children, they understand it in a more real way. When I find the young ones who are learning meditation from very early, they are different beings. They're not confined to religion. They're advanced, you know? And so even in talking about it, we have to move past where things come from now and understand where things are, where things rest, where things, you know, the source of things, the source of all things.
That's why you were focusing on breathing so much today, because it's really easy to say that the breathing is the base, and then you go further.
It is. Because I don't purport to know everything. I'm on a journey just like everyone else. People are at different places in their journey, and whatever you learn, when you assimilate it, you keep what is true, and the things that are just words will melt away, and you remember them in your body, in your muscle memory, in your DNA, and they change you, you know? And that is what is really important. It's not so much the talking, because sometimes the mind is so disturbed with all the information coming at it that you really have to tap into the breath to find any kind of peace. And that's what we're promoting, just finding the breath and filling your mind with thoughts of, with you know, with the highest vibrations. Not thoughts, vibrations, you know, but just finding that stillness, finding that space of centeredness. That is something you can't describe. That is something you really have to experience. I didn't experience it until I sat in extended periods of time just breathing, you know, and that is something that is truly profound, and that is what I encourage, definitely.
Yeah, and about also looking for the calm. I grew up in a small village, I think as you did as well.
I guess, yes. You could.
And then I moved to the huge city, to Krakow, where I started to study and stuff like this. But it was so difficult for me to stay there for a long time, because I don't know, but I felt like that there were too many things around me, and I always had to come back to visit my parents or just to visit my friends in my village, because I needed the
centeredness, balance. The grounding. Yes, true. In Jamaica, I had to move to the city. My whole family moved to the city, so I didn't have a choice. There was nowhere for me to go back to because everybody came. But I have my grandparents in the country, and I have my friends in the other side of the island. So as much as I can, I try to kind of get away, you know? And my parents are country people too, small village people. So when even the home that we've created in the city is kind of a little oasis, full of trees, even in the little space that we live, you know? So it's kind of making your environment anywhere you are, you know? Making it feel like home, make sure that you are connected with your plant family as well, you know? Yeah.
When you came to the city, you started with studies and work like systematic corporate
the traditional
way, and then you abandoned that. Was it a process or any particular event that?
No, it wasn't a particular event. It was the process. It was knowing since I was in university that I was only going to do, you know, a few years. Before I started working, I knew, you know, you're going to pay off your student loan, pay off all your bills, and retire when you're 25. I always knew. So when I started working, I always ended up in very good jobs. But I always made it a point of duty not to stay there for more than a year. So when a year was drawing nigh, I started to look around to see what was coming next. And the people who I would work for, you know, they'd be like, no, stay, you know, we can. And I'm like, no, that's just not the plan. And they didn't understand it. And I didn't try to explain it. I just knew that this is just for a time. And so I moved through corporate Jamaica, always getting very good jobs, learning about my country, learning about politics and the private sector and the public sector, and meeting people from all walks of life, you know, meeting very, very wealthy and influential people, meeting some very, very poor people too. And it helped to shape my perspective because I grew up in a kind of sheltered environment. So that for me was a part of the education. And then when the time came, I just transitioned out of it. So I always knew put down your little savings because you soon leave and you won't have no money. So I just, put my little savings aside. And when I left corporate, I started to just shed some of the things that you think you need. I don't go out and party and have to shop often and so on. So I just kept it really minimal and I was able to survive. And I lived with a family who had great faith in me. Even when I didn't understand it, they would support some of the things that I did, even when they didn't understand it. And so that kind of support made it much more easy for me to kind of be myself and explore my spirit in a safe space, with the security of knowing that, I have a place to live. When I was rich and working in corporate, I could have bought a house, but I decided that wasn't the path, And in staying with my family, that's an important thing too, because so often we leave family and want to go and make roots for ourselves, but really the indigenous way is to stay with your family, build community, strengthen each other. We're in an individualistic kind of society, and it's very dangerous because people don't have the foundation and the grounding and the roots that they had. And so, you get married and you go off and you live with one person, and you and this one person live together, and there's nobody to talk to other than this other person. And when there's an argument, it's just stress, and then you divorce. And if there are children, then the children get, and there's no community. There's no elder to say, don't or do. And there's no one around to say you can't do that, and, nobody to look up to. So we've lost community, we've lost the village essence, the family values. So I found it really important to stay close to family. I wanted to do that, and that has helped me a great deal on this journey too.
So you kind of abandoned the system, but there is a nice phrase on your first album. I know from experience that the system is flawed, so I live outside as much as I possibly dare.
Because you have to give to Caesar what is due to Caesar as well, because you're not trying to... Balance is important. And a lot of times, because we act from a place of emotion as opposed to a place of stillness, we are reactive, and so the system does this, so we do this, instead of just being in your center, so that whatever comes, you just move with it and you still stay grounded. And that is really crucial, It's not them killing us, so we're going to kill them. It's more, I am going to be in my own space, so much so that they can't even see me, That kind of vibes.
Yeah, and according to building the community, you're a huge activist, as I know, as far as I know. You are one of the person who invented the idea to build a Manifesto Jamaica?
Well, I am one of the people who, when they wanted to build that, they called upon me, because I had the experience of corporate, so I had the administrative experience to help them put it together and to make sure that it wasn't just, we're going to put on a festival, but it was, we're going to set up certain administrative things so that we can do more than just have an event. We can be advocates for the arts, we can have a structure within, and so on. So, there were young people. I was one of the older people in the group at the time. So, they came kicking and screaming. They didn't like the order, but we all, after a while, realized, we have to set a structure so that it can grow. And an awesome festival we were able to put on, and so many things sprung up after that. Like, we have such a rich culture of arts and activism in Kingston now. I mean, the youths are alive and very much tapped into their consciousness. So we see where every little bit of work that we do makes a difference, Not all of the work that I do is within an organization. And I kind of find myself moving away from the whole organization and starting to let it be more of a lifestyle. Like, my parents are servants too. They're community leaders, they're servants. So I understand that service is a cultural thing. Service is not necessarily for social media purposes or to make sure that people know that you do things too. And I can tell you, Ray, I do most of my work in secret. I don't tell people the work I'm doing. But I've cultivated a reputation so that when something needs to be done, I'll get a phone call. And I will go and do what is necessary to be done, or because people know that this is how I am, then when I call them and say, we have this to do, they will get up and act, And I think that's more important than being a part of an organization. I think it is having the character so that you are identified as a servant, so that when the time comes, you know, people know they can depend on you. Yeah.
That character of yours, I guess, works also outside of Jamaica, because what we read is when you were touring in Italy and Malta, right?
Yes.
You get involved with the recent events
the refugees,
of the migration
yes.
crisis. Yeah.
In Italy and in Malta. And that is something that I want to do too, because I remember when I was going on the road last year, I made an effort to connect with some organizations, you know, to reach out. And again, the law of attraction, because once you set that intention that I want to see where the African people are, I want to see how Africa is living in Europe. And at the time, I didn't even realize the extent of the trauma. And it just kept escalating after that, to the point where right before we were supposed to go to Malta, there was a huge, like a ship overturned with over 900 people losing their lives, you know? And by the time we got to Malta, some of those very refugees who survived were at the camp that we were visiting. So it was a very, very tense and emotional time. And, you know, we were able to connect with them and to share, you know, some trauma mitigation, to share. I was there with my elder sister, Dr. Kukua Abba, who used to work with the British Health Services on the continent. So she's very familiar with some of the situations there, especially with women and so on. So it was a great opportunity to connect with them, not as a musician, but as an interested, you know, African woman in the diaspora who wants to share and help. So that led to an opportunity in Italy to meet with those refugees there as well. And we're always seeking opportunities to connect with the community when we're on the road, because I understand the privilege I have, you know, to tour the world in this way. And, you know, to be an educated woman, an empowered woman, a black woman with confidence in the world is a powerful image for other black women too. And I don't take that for granted. So as much as I can, I try to share some energy, you know, when I go.
Now I understand why some time ago you said that you're too busy with life and community work to think about the album.
Yeah.
But finally, it will be,
true,
right?
True.
So you found
finally
some time.
It's finished, you know, and I didn't want to be working on an album and, you know, doing other things. I wanted to have the time set aside to just work on it and produce it myself the way I want to. And I went through so much with this one, you know, finding the right people to produce it, and, you know, naturally it turned into just friends of mine who, you know, weren't so interested in the money that was going to be made from it, but really wanted to be a part of the project. And they're who ended up being the ones who, you know, co-produced some of the records with me, some of the songs with me. So 4 of them are produced by my virgins, and the other 5 are produced by me. So it's, you know, I get to debut as a producer now. With, you know, I produce some of the songs on the mixtape too, but this album is really, really, really close to my heart. A very, very personal thing, you know. And so I give thanks for the ones who, I mean, it doesn't feature many other singing artists, just one. But the musicians who were a part of this, they are really the ones that are featured on this, because they were able to translate what it is I wanted, and you know, they had the humility and the composure to do what I asked of them without, you know, trying to put too much of what they expect reggae music to sound like. So they were really open to what I wanted, and I ended up with something really, really beautiful. You know, and I just hope the world will appreciate it as much as I do. Yeah.
Self-producing is something like a theme of our interviews on this festival, because Kabaka Pyramid and also last night Natalie Rise and also last night Alborosi, they all speak about this self-sufficiency. How important it was for you to produce like the major part of your album?
It was everything. Like, I knew I wanted to do this. So, you know, in going on the road for the past 2 years, I was always setting some funds aside so that I could afford to do it, because I've always wanted to, you know. But you know, at first when I just started out, I couldn't imagine being able to produce, but I was always the one creating. I prefer to have music built around my songs rather than singing on a rhythm. You know, so I'm known as, oh, she doesn't like singing on rhythms. But it's not that, it's just that you really have to find the right rhythm. I don't want to compromise and have to twist something around because I don't like how something sounds. And so this gave me the opportunity to do it the way I wanted to. And I was in control in the studio, so I got what I wanted from everyone. And I have a clear vision of everything that I wanted to hear. But still being the feminine, we are flexible. So when we hear something beautiful, we still have the space to say, yeah man, let that stay, you know? Yeah.
Okay, and you have one song named Avocado.
On your previous
On your previous album, yeah, but it's really cute. And it's some kind of a love song, yes? But I don't know, I suppose that there is the other sense of this song connected with
self-sufficiency a little bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Because a song like Avocado wasn't even going to be on the album. It was just a song I was poking, it was a fun song that I created just for my enjoyment. And when I let Rory hear it, he was like, no, you have to put it on the album. And I'm like, no, I don't want to confuse the people. I don't want to send the wrong message. But then I finally conceded that, yeah, okay, I don't mind, because it does have the essence of the message still. It talks about self-reliance. It talks about eating what you grow. It talks about, love between a man and a woman that is not based on material wealth, that is based on respect and, a man honoring a woman and all of these things that I think are important too. So I was okay with, sharing that message for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, very great song. So, and this is the opening track, the Humble Me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this track, despite you have a very strong message, you kind of admit that you're still learning.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you learn in the process of production, this particular album?
So much. I learned the programs, the software, that's for sure. My knowledge exponentially increased because I was just absorbing it all. And I was able to work with some really, really great producers, like producers of music, not for this album, but in observing them and how they produced other music and how they, the engineers worked, I was able to be very hands-on with the process. So I was there at every point, making sure that the sound was what I wanted. And I learned about not compromising, like just making sure, like despite anybody's opinion, like I know what I want, like just trust me until the end. And so, and I watched people who I respect step back and give me the space to do what I wanted to do and then say, yes, I get it. So that was really awe-inspiring for me too. Very humbling again to see, people who you look up to just leave you be and say, yeah man, I like it. So yeah, I learned not to doubt myself, and that gave me great confidence too.
Okay, yeah, that's also important for me to know when to show your borders as well, and
True.
You are sure, and sometimes people say maybe you can do it different way, but you know what you want.
You have to. Yes, I.
That's the point. Okay.
The
and
album is entitled 9.
Yes.
And
we wanted to ask about the symbolism of this.
Well,
number.
we're in the information age, so I don't have to tell you anything about the number 9. The significance of it, it's a part of my name. It has always been JAH9, Janine. So ever since I was young, I've been observing that number, as a mathematical number. I've seen its significance as well. How 9 affects other numbers. Any number you multiply by 9 becomes 9. So 9 multiplied by 2 is 18, 8 plus 1, 9 multiplied by 3, 27, 2 plus 7, etc. and always. And even in the shape of the 9 contains the spiral. It represents the spiral. It also represents the circle. 0 to 9, that is the full breadth of the numeric system that we observe. And 0 is 9 as well, because 0 is a circle, which is 360 degrees, which is 3 plus 6 and 9. If you dissect 360, you get what? 180, 8 plus 1 is 9, dissect 180, 45, 4 plus 5 is 9, and so forth, etc., forever. And these things are significant because these things carry you right back to sacred geometry, which is the original source. And as a woman, I very much connect with sacred geometry because it literally happens inside me at the point of conception. How the egg splits is a mirror image of how life itself unfolds from 0 into the multiplicity, the platonic solids, all the things that are contained within light. There's so much to learn from mathematics and geometry, even though in the West they don't teach us mathematics from a real place. It's a separate thing and you learn about these numbers, but you don't learn number. you know? So I find it really important in a time when people concentrate on so much rubbish and so much frivolous, superficial things, to kind of draw their attention to some things like number, you know, and that kind of significance, because that's all a part of meditation too. It's a part of the reprogramming of one's mind to understand natural and sacred and, you know, high sciences.
In the times of your corporate work, were you working with numbers or?
I always am. Like, I'm always taking 9. Like, if I hear the number 9, I'm just going to look around like they're talking to me. Like, I always, you know, take that really personally. And the people around me, like, I will choose it. And I will always be drawing attention to it. And I've watched a lot of people just become more aware of numbers because of my obsession, you know? And I think it's a good thing. I think observing it, and numbers have meaning. Numbers have meaning in the natural world. So I think it's important that we focus on some natural things. It helps us to shift our concentration toward consciousness rather than the frivolous things of the world.
And you were able to set up a date for your album that it's
naturally,
also very,
you know, as if I'd planned it all along. But this is the year of 9, you know. This is 9. Not the year of 9, not because I say so, not because I'm dropping an album this year, but it literally is. 2016, 2 plus 6 plus 1 is 9. And so you can also look that up to see all of the significance of a year of 9 and what it means in the universe, you know. It's a feminine number. It is the year of the woman, you know. It has great significance in terms of change and chaos and darkness, which are feminine principles, you know, which are, we look at as good and evil, but there is no good and evil. There is just, you know, to and fro, you know, and we just have to, just like the feminine principle of water, we have to be willing to flow, you know, and these are the things we want to encourage this year. Not the stringent, you know, left brain kind of hardness, but yeah, a more flexible kind of approach to life.
Okay, and according to numbers.
Last question, because we are pushed by time.
It's so interesting, but yeah. You said today that you started to write when you were 6, and you used only your imagination. And now you have a lot of experiences and
I'm still using my imagination.
Yeah.
True. For me, the writing process, I mean, I remember writing at 6. I might have even started before then, but I have memories of being 6 years old writing limericks. Like, I remember some of the things I was writing at that time. I started reading early, so I had a relationship with word, you know, and I that is how I expressed. I was the youngest one in my family, so nobody wants to hear me all the time, so you find a way to express. You know, if you have the opportunity, you write. And I just used to write. I used to write on whatever I could find. If I was upset and I couldn't get to express myself, I would write. Some of the things I've written I would never share, but they were just for my benefit. So that was my relationship with poetry. When it became music now, it changed because I had to be very careful with the word sound that I was going to share with the world, you know, because of the same law of attraction. You don't want to utter anything that you're not trying to manifest. So I was very intentional. I am very intentional with the word sound that I put out. So my poetry now has evolved into a part of my service.
Okay.
So it doesn't kill your imagination, because
not
you
at
say
all.
that you have to be more conscious and use the words properly. So
It doesn't at all. What it does, it helps to refine me. This is a part of the programming too, because in writing this kind of music, I'm programming myself. You know, and that is what we need to do as human beings. We are divine creatures. We're not just moving on instinct like animals. We have the ability to meditate, so we have to use whatever tools we have to empower our concentration. Yeah.
Okay, so we are waiting for the effects of your work on the 9th September, right?
Yes, the 9th
and
of September.
Thank you very much for the interview. And for
Yes,
the talk.
yes,
It was
yes.
very inspirational.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you.